to their protection and conservation. So I've also worked with these animals before my master's, so although I'm nowhere close to being an expert, I'm hoping that I can teach you some new info and fun facts that you can share with others, maybe help you leave this lecture with a new perspective on human-dolphin interaction. So I know a lot of people love these animals, and obviously I do too, so I'm really excited to talk to y'all today. So let's go ahead and get started. So there are 40 species of dolphins in the world, and these include a large range of unique animals from the tiny Maui's dolphin, which is about 5 feet in length, to the large orca, which is about 22 to 30 feet in length. And in case you didn't know, yes, an orca is a dolphin and not a whale, in spite of its misleading nickname. So the species most commonly found along the Florida coast, though, is the bottlenose dolphin, or Tursiops truncatus, if you really want to impress people with the scientific name. So bottlenose dolphins grow to be between 6 to 13 feet. They weigh between 300 to 1,400 pounds. And now when scientists talk about bottlenose dolphins, they're generally categorized into two main groups. So estuarine, or inshore, and coastal, or offshore. So you may hear me use those terms at some point, so I'm just going to go over a quick overview. So inshore dolphins are usually a bit smaller, while offshore dolphins are a bit larger. The more important difference, though, involves their movement with the idea of a home range. So inshore dolphins habituate an area called a home range, which is a space in which individuals and groups perform normal daily activities. So inshore dolphins are those that are considered residents in a region. So these maps give you an example of what a home range might be. So the dots are individual sightings for a dolphin, and the shaded area is what we would consider that dolphin's home range. Minimum area for home range of one dolphin has been estimated to be about 95 shoreline miles. In the Gulf and other equatorial regions, home ranges are usually pretty permanent, but some dolphins migrate seasonally in other areas to accommodate prey migration. So most of what we know about dolphins, we know from these estuarine or inshore dolphins, which is why I kind of wanted to briefly touch on this distinction between the two. So they're easier to find, they stay in one place over time, and we can gather more information from them because of this. And now when we talk about home ranges, we're talking about the fact that they stay in one, relatively small area. But for some individual dolphins, it can be even more specific. So for example, there are some dolphins in Sarasota that are always found in one particular inlet or by a certain bridge. So just a fun example, there's a dolphin named Joker in Sarasota, and he is always in the south survey route. So if you're on that survey route and you haven't seen him yet, you know that you still have one sighting left for the day. So sometimes it can get really, really specific. Now, so I think it's safe to say, in a completely unbiased opinion, that bottlenose dolphins are the most well-known of the dolphin species, and the one that usually comes to mind when people think of dolphins. So part of this is due to the fact that they can be found in such a wide range of habitats around the world, which is demonstrated by the darker blue areas in this map. So in addition to them being quite widespread, they're also the most common species found in aquariums and parks, so people just interact with them and they're exposed to them more than other species. They mainly live in shallow areas where the weather is tropical and temperate, and they make use of various habitats within the ocean, including harbors, bays, gulfs, estuaries, and the open ocean. So the bottlenose dolphin is actually the only species of dolphin found in all Gulf coastal habitats. And now the sum of available abundance estimates is around 750,000 for this species globally. But the vast majority of the species range has not been surveyed, therefore actual abundance is thought to be considerably higher. And as a result, they're classified as least concern by the IUCN Red List. So although these dolphins can be found in so many places, there are two particular areas that are credited for being the world's longest running studies of bottlenose dolphin populations. So that's the close by Sarasota, Florida, and the bit further away is Shark Bay, Australia. So Sarasota population, they have been studying those dolphins since 1970, so it's the world's longest running study. And they've identified about 160 residents in the area that span across 5 generations. So because these two populations have been studied the longest, a majority of the information we know about the species comes from these two programs. So I am most familiar with the Sarasota population as I did an internship with the Mote Marine Lab and worked with the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program who studies that population. So most of what I'm going to talk about does pertain specifically to the Sarasota population as well as the Naples population, which is where I did my master's research. There are certain aspects and behaviors that all bottlenose share, but there is some variability between populations in all different parts of the world with things like social structure or diet. All right, so before we go to population specifics, we're gonna start with some info about individual animals. I figured it would help to go over some anatomy and some terms we might need later. So first, bottlenose dolphins can be distinguished from other dolphin species by their shorter rostrum or beak, their triangular dorsal fins, and their coloring, which is darker gray on their backs and fades to a lighter gray and then white on their tummies. Now, taking it from the top, the melon. So this is the structure located at the top of their head, almost where we would think of their forehead being. It serves to produce the whistle and clicking sounds that dolphins are known for, and allows them to communicate with one another. It is also essential for echolocation, which I'll discuss in a little bit. So next we have the blowhole. Bottlenose dolphins are mammals like us. They're warm-blooded and breathe air through their lungs and their blowhole. So to breathe, they must come to the surface, exhale, and then inhale oxygen quickly. They have a muscular flap that covers their blowhole while underwater, and when they exhale, the air leaves their lungs at about 100 miles per hour. So additionally, when they breathe, they can exchange up to 80% of their lung content, while humans can only exchange about 17% when we breathe. So then we have the pectoral fins. So these are the two fins on either side of their body. These fins help the dolphins steer as they swim and allow them to control their direction of their movement. The dorsal fin is the fin on their back. So this is the one that's used to help stabilize the dolphin while swimming, but it's actually not completely necessary to the dolphin's survival. So there are many dolphins we have seen, unfortunately, with damaged or even completely missing dorsal fins, but they're able to still swim and survive. Now flukes. These are the lobes of a bottlenose dolphin's tail. So they're made of fibrous connective tissue and move up and down to propel the dolphin through the water. The tips of each fluke are slightly cupped to allow a dolphin to catch more water and move faster when swimming. They can reach speeds over 18 miles per hour, but usually you'll find them traveling at a much slower rate. And like many other marine mammals, they have lots of body fat or blubber, which keeps them warm. So as I mentioned, dolphins can echolocate. So echolocation is the process by which an organism makes acoustic signals to gather an idea of what's around it. Dolphins and bats have the most specialized type of echolocation out of all organisms. Dolphins use echolocation to find prey and avoid predators, as well as to get a sense of their surroundings. So to echolocate, dolphins produce high-frequency clicks, which create sound waves that travel very quickly through the water. They travel 5 times faster through water than they do through air. And when the sound waves bounce off objects, they return to the dolphins as echoes, and these echoes are picked up by the lower jaw and melon. So these areas have cavities filled with fatty tissue that channel the sound toward the inner ear and onto the brain. By combining their regular eyesight and echolocation, they can determine the shape, speed, distance, size, and direction of travel of objects around them. So another super fascinating aspect of dolphins that you may have heard of is something called a signature whistle. So these whistles are unique to each individual and are basically names. So it would be the same as us calling out our own name to identify ourselves to others. Whistles help the dolphins keep in contact with each other over a very large range. So we might see a mom without her calf or a male pair separated, but that doesn't mean that they're not in contact under the water and know exactly where the other one is. So the hearing range for dolphins depends on the environment. In a study done on communication between moms and their calves, scientists found that in seagrass, shallow water areas, low frequency whistles could be heard by dolphins 487 meters away. Whereas in shallow areas with a mud bottom, the same whistle could be heard up to 2 kilometers away. And in channels specifically, bottlenose dolphins can hear high-frequency whistles up to 20 kilometers away. And just for the record, this is a dolphin that's been brought onto a boat in Sarasota for a health survey. So there are trained vets and scientists working quickly to gather as much information about the dolphin's health as possible in the short time they bring them out of the water. It doesn't hurt them in any way, and the suction cups you see on the dolphin's melon and lower jaw are there to record the dolphin's clicks and whistles. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have heard that dolphins are very intelligent, and this is true. So the cerebral cortex, which is the part of the brain linked to creativity, memory, reasoning, emotion, and sense of self, is large in bottlenose dolphins, meaning that they are capable of complex cognition, particularly that associated with intricate social organization. So the number of synapses in the brain has also been hypothesized to correlate with complex thinking, and the amount of these synapses is comparable in human and dolphin brains. Bottlenose dolphins have also been seen using things from their environment as tools. So for example, in Australia, which is the picture here, they've been shown to use marine sponges on their noses to protect their rostrum when probing for fish. Finally, bottlenose dolphins are known for being playful in the wild and participating in social behaviors, which is further evidence of complex thinking, since dolphins are not only responding to their basic needs and environment, but are also finding ways for entertainment. So let's talk about baby dolphins. Bottlenose dolphins are born year-round globally, but there are specific peak seasons for each population. So for example, the dolphins in Sarasota are born in the summer, while the dolphins in Naples are born in the fall. So calves are about 1 meter in length, and they weigh about 40 pounds when born after a 12-month gestation period. So dolphins have one calf at a time, and when they're born, they have something called fetal folds, which are the vertical stripes along their sides that you can see in the photos here. These disappear within the first 6 months of life, so it's the easiest way to identify newborn dolphins, or yoys, which is young of year, as we call them. So a calf will usually nurse for about 18 months, but can nurse up to several years. Nursing only occurs for a few seconds at a time, and the calf nurses often throughout the day. So drinking milk in salt water, I'm sure we're all thinking, seems like a very hard feat, and it is. So in order to do this, dolphin calves actually can roll their tongues into straw-like shapes, which allow them to form a watertight seal to keep out the salt water while they nurse. And the milk is also much thicker and resembles more of a milkshake consistency. So calves can start eating little fish when they're just a few months old, but during their first few years of life, they will continue to learn to catch fish on their own and gradually nurse less and less. Calves usually stay with their moms for about 3 to 6 years on average, and during this time, learn how to fish, avoid predators, and navigate their environment. So when they're old enough to leave their moms, calves go out and form mixed-gender juvenile groups until they're old enough to start reproducing. So females reach sexual maturity around 5 to 7 years old and usually start having calves when they're between 6 and 13. On average, though, most females have their first calf at the age of 8. And on the other hand, males sexually mature at 10 to 12 years old. As far as we know, bottlenose dolphins in this area tend to live to around their mid-60s. So just recently, a couple years ago, the oldest known dolphin in the world, named Nicolo, passed away at the age of 67. So the ages of dolphins are known in 2 main ways. One, if they've been monitored since birth, which is done in Sarasota, for example, or by taking a single tooth during health surveys and counting the growth rings, like the rings on a tree, and that's how we estimate age. So, more about social structure. As most of us know, dolphins are very social animals, and they form bonds with other dolphins. They're not solitary animals like the larger whale species. Bottlenose dolphins generally remain in groups of 2 to 15 individuals that are organized based on sex and age. Other species of dolphins are found in larger pods of up to a few hundred animals, but bottlenose dolphins, in this area especially, will never do that. So depending on the population, a group of dolphins may be considered a pod, but here in Florida, this is not what we call them. We call them a fluid social group or a fission-fusion society. The reason we do this is because a pod is a group of animals that stays together, and that is not what our animals do. So instead, they are constantly moving in groups that split up and reform with new members. So 1 minute you could have 6 dolphins, the next minute you only have 2, and then a few minutes later you'll have a group of 4 that only has 1 dolphin from the original group. So group members can change rapidly or can stay together over longer periods of time, depending on the specific population. So in looking at specific bonds, the strongest one is that of a mom and a calf, as I'm sure you could guess. So as I said, they stay together for 3 to 6 years, with the calf rarely leaving the mom's side. As it gets older, it will spend more time further from mom, exploring its surroundings, until eventually it's old enough to go away completely on its own. The second strongest bond, though, is my personal favorite. So these are what scientists, in my opinion, lamely call a male pair alliance. So I more accurately call them bro buds. And basically, bro buds are 2 males that form an alliance after their juvenile stage and then stay together for their entire lives. So they do this to help each other find mates, as well as to protect each other from predators. These bro buds will travel a bit farther than the females do throughout the region as they search for mates, but will still call a specific area home, which is like that home range that I talked about. They'll still have one of those. They just might move outside of it, visit a nearby dolphin community every once in a while to diversify the mating pool. Now let's talk about the most common dolphin behaviors. So these include resting, traveling, milling, socializing, feeding, and disturbance behaviors. We'll start with resting. So you may think, how do dolphins sleep if they need to breathe air? And the answer is that they shut down half of their brain. So one half sleeps while the other controls breathing and looks out for predators. They do not sleep for long periods of time like we do. Instead, they take shorter naps whenever they need them. You know a dolphin is resting when it's moving very slowly and staying very close to the surface. So whales do the same thing, and some of the larger species will remain completely still and just float at the surface, and we call this behavior appropriately logging. So these sleep behaviors make dolphins and whales very prone to boat strikes, because if boaters aren't paying attention and if they're moving too quickly, the dolphins and whales can't move out of the way and they end up being hit. Next, we have traveling and milling. So these are 2 classifications pertaining to dolphin movement. Traveling is the behavior dolphins do when they're on a mission. They're usually moving quickly in one direction and swimming relatively close together. Milling is when dolphins are just hanging out. They're usually moving slowly, changing directions, interacting with each other and their environment. This is a behavior where you might also witness socializing at the same time. So speaking of socializing, juvenile dolphins spend a large amount of time playing with other juveniles. This play can develop into useful feeding strategies or problem-solving skills. Bottlenose dolphins primarily affiliate with a group through physical contact with one another. So this type of behavior has been shown to release oxytocin, which has been linked to social synchrony in humans, promoting trust, cooperation, and social bonding. They also communicate via whistles and clicks, as I mentioned earlier. So bro buds, the male pair alliance I talked about, don't often swim farther than a couple feet apart. And when they are further apart, they are still in constant communication using their system of clicks and whistles. So if you see dolphins really having a good time socializing, it will usually look like these crazy splash pictures on the left. So it's super fun to watch, but not great to photograph. So next is the fun of feeding. Bottlenose dolphins use so many different techniques to pursue and capture prey depending on the environment they live in. So these techniques include herding, seawall feeding, kerplunking, crater feeding, strand feeding, pinwheeling, and fish whacking. So the ones we most commonly see in this area are seawall feeding, kerplunking, and fish whacking. So seawall feeding is when they trap fish against seawalls or kind of use it as a second dolphin to corner fish, and it makes fish easier to catch. Kerplunking is the picture here in the top right, and that's when a dolphin slaps the water with their flukes to create bubbles that disturb and disorient prey in shallow grass patches, which then makes them easier to catch. And finally, fish whacking is when a dolphin smacks a fleeing fish with its flukes and launches the fish into the air, sometimes up to 20 feet. So the dolphin will then find this stunned fish and consume it. And yes, it is one of my favorite feeding behaviors to watch, but it makes me feel really bad for the flying fish. So bottlenose dolphins swallow their food whole, they do not chew, and so their esophagus is slightly elastic to help with this. They also eat fish head first, so the fish spines don't get caught in their throats. During this process of eating, salt water is pushed out of the mouth before the dolphin swallows to avoid consuming it. Adult dolphins eat 4 to 6% of their body weight in food per day, so that's anywhere from 15 to 30 pounds. So bottlenose dolphins can feed on a variety of prey, such as fish, squid, and crustaceans. In the Sarasota and Naples area, though, the most common diet consists of pinfish, striped mullet, pigfish, and spot. So in this area, dolphins tend to hunt alone or in small groups and feed on individual fish. But in other areas of the world, a larger group may aggregate to prey on a school of fish together. And a final type of behavior is what we call disturbance behaviors. So these are things that dolphins do when they're upset for some reason, and usually it's because the boat is too close or people are harassing them. So these behaviors are things like strongly exhaling, which is called chuffing. So that's the picture in the top right corner. This is when dolphins breathe out very forcibly, and it causes their breath to make a loud chuff sound as it exits their blowhole. There's also tail slapping, breaching, repeated avoidance behaviors like erratic changes in speed and direction. And if they spend lengthy periods of time underwater, that's usually a sign that they're unhappy and trying to get away from an area without being followed. So as I mentioned earlier, 5 generations of dolphins have been identified in Sarasota. And the way that we know this is because we can tell individual dolphins apart. The way that we do this is through the nicks and notches on their dorsal fins. So the specific pattern of nicks and notches, those little indentations and missing pieces that you can see in these photos, are unique to each individual. And we use this unique pattern to identify each dolphin. So their dorsal fins are what fingerprints are to us. So these fin features can sometimes be challenging for identification though, as they can change over time, and as you can see from these photos, some of them are so tiny that they are hard to capture clearly on camera, especially with a moving, splashing dolphin, waves, it can be challenging. So in addition to the fin ID method, a freeze brand can be put on their dorsal fins and sides, which you can see in the top left and bottom right pictures. So the freeze brand does not hurt the dolphins, and it just lasts for a few years, slowly fading over time, but it's definitely easier to see in photos than looking at the tiny nicks and notches. So now that we've talked a lot about dolphins, it seems like there's a lot we already know about them. But there's also a lot of research still being done on bottlenose dolphins around the world. So why is this? Several reasons, of course. But as I mentioned earlier, very little is known about certain populations. And even though bottlenose dolphins are currently abundant, they still need to be studied and conserved so that they don't become threatened or endangered. We need to gather baseline data so that when harmful events happen, like red tide blooms, hurricanes, or oil spills, we can better understand the impacts on the population. Additionally, studying dolphins helps more than just the dolphins. So dolphins are considered to be indicator species. And an indicator species is one whose status provides information on the overall condition of the ecosystem and of the other species in that ecosystem. They also reflect the quality and changes in environmental conditions, as well as aspects of community composition. So for example, understanding dolphin distribution and habitat use can give us insight into the distribution of their prey items and quality of fish habitat in an area. Dolphins also store a lot of toxins in their blubber, so by studying the stored toxin levels in different dolphin populations, we can get a better understanding of the toxin levels in their environment. Studying dolphins as an indicator species also helps humans due to the fact that we eat a lot of the same fish species as they do. So knowing how the populations are doing helps us to know about our own food resources. And since we interact with the ocean and depend on it remaining healthy, knowing toxin levels is important for our overall health too. Another reason why we need to study dolphins is because the main threat to their health is us, it's humans. And as the worldwide population continues to grow, our likelihood to negatively impact the ocean and these animals grows as well. So we need to understand the way we affect various populations so that we can alter human behavior accordingly. So two of the main issues dolphins face include entanglement, which is when dolphins get caught in various types of fishing gear, and boat strikes, which result from unregulated boating zones and irresponsible boaters not following boating laws and not looking out for these animals. So both of these things, entanglement and boat strikes, can severely injure and kill these animals. So you'll see here some entanglement pictures, and then the top picture could either be a boat strike where the prop went through the dorsal fin, or an entanglement that cut through the dorsal fin so much that it resulted in that injury. So dolphins also face problems like food depletion, sound pollution, regular pollution, and the newest addition to the bunch and my personal area of semi-expertise, ecotourism. So ecotourism is defined as responsible travel to natural areas that conserves the environment, sustains the well-being of the local people, and involves interpretation and education. It's one of the fastest growing subsectors of the tour industry in the global economy, meaning its potential to impact the environment is growing as well. Within the broader category of ecotourism is whale watching. So whale watching includes land-based, vessel-based, or swimming tours to see, swim with, and or listen to any species of whales, dolphins, or porpoises. Leading up to 2001, the international whale watching industry was valued at over $1 billion and attracted over 9 million people annually. By 2008, this number had grown to over 13 million people participating in over 119 countries, and the industry generated $2.1 billion of tourism revenue worldwide. The US consistently ranks as the largest whale watching industry in the world. In 2008, we had 38% of total global whale watchers. So even though ecotourism and whale watching are important for many countries' economies, it is still one of the factors that can negatively affect dolphins. So these include both short-term and long-term effects, all of which we're just kind of starting to learn about and trying to understand. Short-term effects include things like behavioral changes with dolphins transitioning from resting or feeding to traveling in the presence of boats, increased whistle production, increased inter-breath intervals, meaning that they're staying underwater longer, and injuries from boat strikes and entanglements. While some long-term effects are a decrease in abundance, decline in reproductive success, reduction in fitness, and home range shifts. So in order to try to reduce these impacts, there have been actions taken in varying degrees around the world. In the United States, these include things like the Marine Mammal Protection Act, or the MMPA, which was created in 1972 and was the first act to call specifically for an ecosystem approach to wildlife management. It defines any interaction that alters animal behavior as harassment and is a law complete with fines and possible jail time when violated. In addition, there are the NOAA Marine Mammal Viewing Guidelines, which NOAA has created for different regions of the United States in an attempt to protect marine animals, although these are guidelines rather than laws. Unfortunately, in spite of all of these measures, negative events are still occurring. And many times, this is shown to be an issue of compliance, as rules don't really matter unless ecotourists actually follow them. So, in order to successfully manage ecotourism, we need to assess and understand compliance. Now, when it comes to ecotourism compliance, there are three main factors at play. The first are the interactions between the humans and the animals. The interactions determine compliance on a basic level. However, who decides how these interactions are conducted? Who decides whether or not to comply? This would obviously be the ecotour captains. Without them driving the boats, there would be no interactions, and therefore no compliance to evaluate. So yes, ecotour captains decide whether or not to comply. However, there is one more important piece of compliance, and this would be the passengers. Arguably, the job of an ecotour captain is to make the trip fun for the passengers so that they will enjoy it, hopefully come back, and at least leave a good review. Therefore, it's safe to say that passengers also play a role in compliance, as what they want influences a captain's actions and in turn his compliance. So, in order to assess and fully understand compliance, we need to evaluate it as a holistic system. This means looking at all of the major pieces of the puzzle together. We need to evaluate actual on-the-water compliance levels, captain and passenger knowledge and perceptions of guidelines, and the effects of compliance on passenger experience. So assessing the relationship between these different facets of ecotourism is needed, given that each has been shown to play an important role in compliance. So as a result, the goal of my master's research was to demonstrate the need for this type of holistic approach to compliance studies. To accomplish this, I conducted a study on the compliance of dolphin watching boat tours in Southwest Florida to demonstrate the importance of assessing the interplay of the three different essential aspects of ecotourism. So to address this overarching research goal, I had three specific research objectives. These were to 1, determine the level of ecotour compliance to the Southeast U.S. NOAA Marine Mammal Viewing Guidelines. 2, assess the ecotour captain's perceived compliance levels and perceptions of the guidelines. And 3, assess the ecotour passengers' knowledge and perception of the guidelines, as well as how compliance affects their experience. So start with the first objective, which was to determine the level of ecotour compliance to the guidelines. This one seems pretty straightforward. To do a compliance study, you obviously need to determine the level of ecotour compliance to local viewing guidelines. Knowing which guidelines are the most violated in an area allows managers to have more targeted outreach. So they'll know which guidelines they need to focus on improving the most. And knowing the problem guidelines in an area can also give us insight into the possible impacts the dolphins are facing. So in the case of Southwest Florida, the local viewing guidelines are the NOAA viewing guidelines, as I mentioned earlier. So in the Southeast US, these consist of 12 guidelines pertaining to the best ways to interact with marine mammals and sea turtles to decrease the level of human disturbance. Just to give you a few examples, as you can see here, these guidelines cover things like staying at least 50 yards away from dolphins, not pursuing the dolphins, and not viewing them for longer than 30 minutes. So to measure compliance to these guidelines, I had to first select the ecotours that I would observe. So when selecting ecotours, I did so with 3 main criteria in mind. This was that they operated in the Naples or Marco Island region, that they specifically advertised dolphin watching on their website, and that they weren't privately chartered tours. So my goal in observing these tours was to find the ones that would be interacting with the dolphins the most. So a privately chartered tour might do fishing, it might do shelling, and I wanted the ones that would have the biggest impact on the dolphins because they were the ones spending the most time viewing the dolphins. So after researching all boat tours in the region with help of some wonderful undergrads, I found that there were 7 tour companies that fit my classifications. And then one of the companies had 2 distinct tours with different routes and durations. So I ended up treating those as 2 separate tours for a total of 8 observed tours. So I went on these tours in March and April of 2019, and I went on each one twice for a total of 16 tour observations. So while on the eco tours, all actions of the captains were observed and recorded in order to determine the compliance levels to the NOAA viewing guidelines, which are again shown here. So this is just some of the specific data that was recorded for each dolphin sighting, just to give you an idea. And it was basically any data that would later be needed to determine compliance levels. While on the boats, we also tracked the routes of the tours, and we marked dolphin sightings using a GPS app. We also looked at some specific dolphin, like group size and behavior data, as well as environmental data. So after completing the compliance observations, I found that compliance is relatively low in the Naples area, that there are certain guidelines that are violated at a much higher rate than others, and there are certain ecotours that have higher compliance rates than others. So by evaluating compliance levels in this area, we now have the region's problem guidelines, and we can use that data to inform targeted outreach.
Lindsay, I'm going to stop you for a second. We have a question on How did you make sure your being there didn't have an effect on the levels of compliance?
So I was unknown.
Okay.
I was just one person on the boat, and I just went on. No one knew that I was doing research. If I was asked any questions about who I was, I just said that I was, a scientist looking at dolphins, and then they would start talking to me about dolphins and never ask another question. So, yes. Sorry, I did not see that. I'll make it small in my corner just in case someone else. Thank you, Lacey.
Absolutely.
Let's see. All right, we'll put her over there. Oh, wait, that's in your way now, isn't it? Okay. All right, so we're going to consider objective 1 accomplished with that whole thing and move on to objective 2, which was to assess the ecotour captain's perceived compliance levels and perceptions of the guidelines. Maybe. All right. So as I said, knowing compliance levels is important because if we don't know them, we can't improve them. However, we can't justify or we can't just identify the guidelines because we also need to understand the underlying reasons for compliance. So this means we need to involve captains in our evaluation, which includes their knowledge and opinion of the guidelines, their motivations to comply, and captains' perceptions of their own compliance. So if we understand why captains choose to act the way they do, it can potentially increase our outreach success. So to assess the knowledge and perceptions of captains, we asked captains from the ecotours that we observed. Do we have another question? Do dorsal fins have nerve endings? Do you want me to answer this right now or do you want me to wait? Lacey,
that's up to you. That's
okay.
Up to you.
I'm just gonna go ahead and hold questions till the end. And so just to make it easier so that I can fully give, long answers to people who want answers. And then if you want to pop out of here at 7, we can do that too. So you guys don't have to be trapped. Okay, so don't worry, I will answer that. So to assess the knowledge and perceptions of captains, we gave them an online questionnaire. So it looked at those 3 things: knowledge of dolphins and guidelines, their opinions of the guidelines, and their own perceived compliance. So we approached captains after the 2nd round of observation. So this also answers the question earlier. So that prevented bias in their behavior during the tour observations because they were unaware that I was there, and this would have, given them guidelines and it asked them all kinds of questions. So we saved it till after the 2nd round of observation was done. And if our 2nd round captains were different than the first, then the 1st round captains were also given the questionnaire after all of the observations were finished. So they were provided with a brief explanation, and then I sent them an email with the questionnaire that they filled out online. So in addition to this, for some reason my thing takes a while after a question. Compliance of each captain as well. And this was done using 6 NOAA viewing guidelines. So the reason for these was that they were applicable to all ecotour observations and they were dependent on the captain's actions only, so no other boats. So we determined this perception of their own compliance using the questionnaire as well. And then we compared their observed compliance that we saw during the tour observations to these questionnaire answers. So this was done to give insight into whether or not captains are aware of their own guideline violations. And in addition to the online questionnaire, we also measured captains' knowledge of the dolphins by recording the educational messaging during the tour observations. So this gave us more insight into the knowledge of captains because it showed us what they were confident enough to share with passengers as opposed to what they could recognize from the questionnaire. So this educational messaging was divided into 7 categories, which are shown in the chart along with their inclusion criteria. And then we considered only information that was shared with all passengers part of the ecotour. So conversations between crew and individual passengers were not used for analysis. So when it came to the captains, and what we found from these questionnaires and observations was that they know the guidelines, they support the guidelines and think they're fair, are aware that they're violating guidelines, and still violate them anyway. So clearly there's a disconnect here. And based on their questionnaire answers, as well as their inaccurate educational messaging when it came to biological facts about the dolphins, the disconnect appears to be between knowing the guidelines and understanding the ecological implications of non-compliance. And last but not least was assessing our ecotour passengers. So as I said, passengers can influence captains' actions. And so we wanted to look at passengers as part of this study. So the issue right now is that passengers are seen as a motivation to violate the guidelines because they're perceived to only care about getting as close to the animals as possible. However, they have the potential to have a positive impact on compliance because this assumption of the priority of proximity to animals has been shown to be incorrect. So as a result, passenger attitudes and motivations, as well as how compliance affects their experience, need to be evaluated, and then their answers can be informed back to captains so that passengers can be used as compliance motivators instead of violation motivators. So in order to learn passenger knowledge of the guidelines, their ability to recognize compliance, as well as their value of the importance of compliance and the ways that it affects their experience, we also gave them a questionnaire. So various relationships were assessed using this, and they were distributed to passengers after they got off the boats. So basically passengers who attended the ecotours that we observed, as well as passengers who attended the ecotours during different times when we were not conducting observations, but always these same selected tour companies. So as the passengers disembarked from the tour, we approached them, gave them a verbal explanation of the project, provided them with further details if they wanted, and then asked them to participate in the questionnaire. Now, from this questionnaire, we found that the passengers supported the guidelines, that they valued compliance as they were both willing to pay more for responsible ecotours and felt that their trips would be negatively affected by noncompliance. However, we found that they don't know enough about the guidelines and as a result are unable to recognize when captains are violating them. So even when they observed their captains doing so, the passengers didn't recognize that. And as a result of including passengers in the study, we now know that the passengers in this area can be used as a motivator for compliance since they're in favor of captains following the guidelines and are willing to pay more so that we can then take this information to captains to show them the priority of their customers and hopefully encourage increased education and increased compliance. So with these conclusions in mind, next steps going forward. So for captains, we want to educate them about the importance of compliance and the negative effects on dolphins' health from non-compliance in order to fix that disconnect that we saw. We also want to educate them about the importance of compliance to their passengers and the potential economic benefit to be had from educated passengers and their own compliance. And then with passengers, we need to educate them about the guidelines and the reasons for them so that they can then encourage proper behavior by captains. And all of this education is needed, but it's been shown that education on its own is not enough. So since that's true, we need to create outreach programs that involve more than education. So it needs to be things like a motivational element in education. You want to create a message that focuses on specific achievable actions, promote positive behavior changes rather than discourage certain actions, and design programs with the local community in mind, as well as involve all participation from all different stakeholders. So for ecotourism, that would mean including captains. So that means that captains need to be invited into the discussion. They're a vital part of this, and they need to be invited in to talk about changes in the guidelines, compliance, and educational messaging. So if captains' opinions are heard and they're involved in the decision-making process, their sense of ownership regarding the guidelines and education will likely increase their potential to change their behavior. And so if captains change their compliance behavior, as well as improve their educational messaging on tours, this will result in more educated passengers. And the more educated passengers will then support captain compliance, and captains can benefit from continued compliance. And this benefit continues to motivate captains to comply and educate, which leads to educated passengers supporting compliance, and it all begins again. So if all aspects of ecotourism are evaluated and addressed as a multifaceted system, there is the potential for the creation of a positive feedback loop, which is shown here. And in addition to that, although I completed my research on dolphin watching ecotours in Southwest Florida to show this importance of evaluating compliance as a complete system, I like to think that there's an even bigger takeaway. So the approach in this study is one that can be applied to other scientific disciplines. My project is a reminder that it's always important for us to look at the whole picture the best that we can and not get stuck fixating on only one part. So when you focus on just one piece of an interconnected system, you're sure to miss something important. And I think we've all learned in this time of coronavirus that a situation has never suffered from a little extra added perspective. And finally, you think, okay, this may be great for the ecotours and great for wreck boaters, but what if I'm not out on a boat often? Well, I'm sure we all know, as lots of us live or have lived in Florida, that we know someone who owns a boat or goes out on a boat. So a great thing you can do is share info about the guidelines and positive human-dolphin interactions with others. But there are also still things that you can do to help the dolphins and the environment overall, like some of the things I've listed here. And I know we've all heard these suggestions before, and the problem seems really big. But the thing is, I'm a firm believer, and what I've seen in my line of work is that we really don't need a few people doing really big things, but we truly do need a lot of people doing little things. And I promise it adds up and it makes a difference. So I just want everyone to keep doing what you can. So just that, I'd like to give a quick shout out to my advisory and committee, as well as the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program for their contributions to my master's research. Here's lots of references. And then I'll say thank you and for coming and listening, and I will now take questions if anybody has them.
Okay. You had that one. Do dorsal fins have nerve endings? From Victor.
I would like to say yes, but I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I don't actually know the exact answer to that, unfortunately. So like I said, there is blood supply and everything. So I want to say there's at least nerve endings to some extent. So like I said, we've had a lot of, so sorry, I'm getting all these alerts. We have had dolphins with no dorsal fins and everything like that, and they seem to survive pretty well. Some of them will come back and some of them don't, but I'm not 100% sure, unfortunately. You already got me.
Okay, and R. Williams, do dolphins bite?
Do dolphins bite? Yes, dolphins bite. Why am I this? Yes, dolphins bite. So please do not ever try to feed them. It's a huge thing that's in the MMPA, and it's actually illegal, and you can get a huge fine. But yes, they bite. And there was actually a dolphin named Beggar in Sarasota who people fed and got accustomed to people feeding it. And there are many records of people getting pretty nasty bites. So they're not sea puppies. Please don't stick your hand near their mouth.
We have yay MRRP from the person who used to manage the FWC program. Nice comment from an anonymous. And then Susan Dunbar wants to know, were captains receptive to answering your survey after finding out about your research, and why you were aboard, and I guess why you were aboard the tour? Also, why is throwing leftover bait not good?
Oh man, I feel like your questions are coming in. I'm in the chat. Are you in a different chat?
I'm in the Q&A.
Oh, there's a Q&A and a chat.
There's a Q&A at the bottom of the screen.
Got it. No, I have it now. Okay, cool.
They're coming in both places.
Well, it says my Q&A, but I don't have any of the ones that you had. Oh, it's a chat too. Okay, I was in the Q&A.
Susan's was in the chat, but then you've got others in the Q&A.
I'm everybody. Captains receptive to answering my survey. It depended on the captain. So some of them were super chill about it. And honestly, overall, all of the captains, when they did find out, some of them found out while I was on the boat that I was a researcher. I didn't say, I'm looking at your compliance levels, because obviously that would have biased behavior. But when they found out that I was a dolphin researcher, they were super excited. They tried to tell me a bunch of stuff. They were telling me all these stories, and there's just like a lot of enthusiasm there. So I definitely think that this population of people, these ecotourists, have the potential to be these people that care and comply. They need a little push. So yeah, no one was mad, no one was upset, and some of them were super enthusiastic, and almost everyone filled out the survey, so that was good. Throwing bait, leftover bait, it basically trains dolphins to associate boats with food. And we never want that to happen, because they'll come closer to the boats, and when people are fishing, they'll get stuck in fishing lines, or they'll get hit by boats and that kind of thing. So just keep your bait on board. let's say I have one, did the captain's knowledge change or anything once you told them they weren't being compliant? So that's actually a great question and a frustrating question. So this was the end of my research. So I was never able to do a follow-up. It's a really frustrating thing about a master's is you do the research and publish the paper, and then it's for other organizations such as NOAA or things like that to kind of use the research, use what I have, and kind of make changes in different populations. So I never was able to talk to them post-survey or anything like that. How do the dolphins react to the red tide? It can kill them. Usually they'll try to move out of the area to an extent, but basically if everything's red tide like we had in Sarasota a couple years ago, there's no option for them. So there were a large amount of animals that died because of red tide. The food source, so the fish die in these huge numbers, and the fish population takes a really long time to come back. And so what happens is the years after a red tide, you look at sort of emaciation in the population. The dolphins aren't able to eat enough, and there's these year-long lasting effects because of fish population decrease because of red tide. I would love to not maybe go for my PhD, someone said, but I would love to finish this project. So it's not completely over. I'm talking to NOAA and trying to, make sure that it actually continues on. Someone asked what I'm working on now. So I'm trying to get this paper published, and then I'm also a co-author on a paper that's looking at injury levels. So the entanglement and boat strike stuff I talked about, there appears to be a large number of dolphins, more than normal, who have these injuries in Naples. And so we're trying to sort of look at those numbers and then maybe later on figure out why there is an increased number of these human interaction injuries. I think we have them, right?
I think that's it, yeah.
Oh,
Susan.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
We don't have any hands up this time. Okay, sometimes we have hands up too, so I have to watch all three of them.
Oh, someone said my family is from Naples. This is great.
Oh, we have a hand up. I knew it.
Yeah, so
as I said it.
It's Florida Adventures and Rentals. So they do a bunch of different stuff, but Dolphin Watching is one of them. And Captain Mike is actually my best captain of all. And Marco, he's not a captain, he's like a naturalist, but he's also really good too. So Florida Adventures and Rentals, they're the best. Get the word out. I approve.
Okay, Phyllis, you have a question?
Yes, what is the average time that the monitors are put on dolphins to track them? Do they stay on a month, a week? Does it depend on the individual doing the research?
Yeah, so you're talking about when we like put satellite trackers on dolphins?
Yes.
Yeah, so that basically it depends on the research and sort of the goal of the project, but usually not more than 24 to 48 hours.
Oh, good.
So it doesn't affect them at all as far as it's not a painful procedure, nothing like that. And basically they just stick to the dolphin for a certain amount of time, and then they suction cup themselves off and they float to the surface and put out a GPS transmitter, and then the scientists will go and find it and pick it up and download the data off of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Do we have anybody else? Thank you for the thank yous. I really appreciate everyone being here.
I don't see anybody else.
All right.
Okay. With that, I'm going to say thank you to you, Lindsay. We really appreciate you being here this week and showing us all you've talked about. It's fascinating. And there's Rhonda. Okay. Overwhelmed. So much information and so much to learn. Next week, we will be meeting again Thursday at 6 p.m. talking about with Cocktails and Crime. Deputy Michael Crump will be here with the Sheriff's Department. He's going to be talking about neighborhood crime watches and how a neighborhood can get involved, especially during this time during a pandemic, crime rates have gone up, and how we can use the neighborhood groups to deflate situations or aid in decreasing the statistics of, violence or something within a household. So if you're available, we'd love for you to come by, and we will see you next week. If nobody has any more questions, no?
I don't think
Nope,
so.
I think we're good. All right, thank you so much, and we will see you then, and have a great week. Everybody be safe out there. And that's it. Thanks, Lindsay.
To get her to my my Zoom is just going
It's going crazy.
it's going crazy.
Okay.
One day she'll work.